Chris Shandak, CYInterview covering Las Vegas and the world. We continue our road to WrestleMania in Las Vegas. We are 17 days away from night one of WrestleMania here at Allegiant Stadium, home of the Las Vegas Raiders. That event will take place again on April 19th and 20th, and that week there's going to be a ton of other wrestling events. Today we bring you our past CYInterview with pro wrestling legend, one of the greats of all time, former, of course, WWF champion, the great Bruno Sammartino. Here is our past CYInterview with Bruno Sammartino right now.
Chris Shandak here with you with Jay Bildstein for Diaday.com. It's been a few years since I last spoke to the wrestling legend who took the world by storm through many decades. He's got his re-release of his biography out this month, Bruno Sammartino. Thank you for joining me and Jay today. How are things going in your life? It's been a few years since we last talked. I know you've been out on the convention circuit and reintroducing yourself to the wrestling community these last few years. What's it been like?
Well, you know what? It's been great, but I don't do too many. I do maybe 10 a year, and it's nice. It's fun to go into these places and see, a lot of the fans that come out and have a chance to talk with them, sign autographs, take photos, or whatever, and I enjoy it. But then come around November till March, and I won't do anything because I don't like to. I did too much traveling throughout my years, and winter times can be awfully nasty. And at this stage of my life, I don't like to travel in the winter. So I do, like I say, only about 10 appearances. I enjoy them very much, talking with the fans and what have you. And in the winter, I have my own little schedule. I get up early in the morning. As old as I am, I get up in the morning 6 days a week, and I work out. I do 3 days with my weights in my gym here at home, and the other 3 days I do aerobic. And when it's good weather, I go outside and do 6 miles of road work. And now that it's winter, I do either the treadmill or the stationary bike. But I try to keep in shape. And then Sunday's my day where I watch football, relax, and spend time with my grandkids and my sons and wife, and that's it.
Yeah, well, speaking of the book, Bruno Sammartino, an autobiography of wrestling's living legend, it's being re-put out there, revisited to the general public, redistributed. Why was this the right time to put the autobiography back out there and give the general public a better chance to look at it, since it's in a bigger distribution this time?
Okay, I'll tell you why I got interested when somebody told me what could be done. It's been bothering me now for a number of years that people, when I do a personal appearance, people come with me with that book for me to autograph it. And they'll tell me, I paid $80 for this book on eBay. One doctor told me he paid $125 for the book on eBay. Believe me, I've had quite a few of these. And that bothered the heck out of me. It really, really did. Because, see, what happened when we did the book, I didn't even want to do it. I was against it. But there was some local guys here in Pittsburgh where I live. They said, look, we'll take an hour or two whenever you can spare us, and go through your life and blah, blah. And me not knowing anything at all. Keep in mind, this is way back in 1990, 91, whatever year it was. Me not knowing anything about publishers and what have you. I thought that when they were going to do this book, that the idea was to have it distributed nationwide. This is what I kind of was told. But actually, these guys turned out to be local guys who had jobs, and this was a side thing that they were trying to break into. So when they printed 10,000 of these books, I made appearances locally, different bookstores here, and the books were sold. But then when I saw that they did not have the connections or know-how, whatever, to distribute it nationwide, then I refused. They wanted to do a second print, and I said, no, I'm not going to appear in these stores all over again. I said, if you can distribute it nationwide, show me that you can do that's one thing. But otherwise, no, forget about it. So we never did a second printing. And as a result, all those books that were mostly here in the vicinity, I'm not, what happened is that a lot of them, I guess, they they start putting these books on eBay to sell for a big profit, and I was really bothered. I've been bothered by that for a number of years. So this Sal Carenti told me, he says, you know, what you can do is put it out there on the internet so that people pay the regular price and don't have to pay those ridiculous prices. He says, we'll make a couple changes. He had something or whatever. And I said, well, if it calls for just that and it doesn't call for me to go traveling around to make appearances for it and what have you, I said, if it's as simple as he made it sound, I said, fine. My only interest really, believe it or not, is that does bother me a lot when I've heard so many people tell me what they paid for it. And anybody who's interested in it, so that they can get it for what it's worth, you know, for the right price.
They can get it,
and that's basically the whole idea of it.
Yeah, they can get it at WrestlingRiotOnline.com, where you can purchase the copy of the book. Jay, go ahead.
You know, Bruno, it's a pleasure to be speaking to you. One thing I want to kind of hop in and focus, because I haven't seen tremendous overt focus on this in your regard. You are known worldwide for your greatness in professional wrestling. My background is in powerlifting and in fitness and in weightlifting and this type of thing. And growing up in New York City, and of course, you have to know the effect you had on New York City. You know, everybody knew who Bruno Sammartino was. Everybody was going to Madison Square Garden and so forth. But my focus on you had always been as a strength athlete. And I think what a lot of folks don't realize is that, quite frankly, to this day, you were one of the most extraordinary strength athletes who had come along. And I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit. I read, for example, that I believe you set a bench press record, now I don't know if this was in the 50s, of about 560-some-odd pounds. This was at a time, I don't know if you remember who Marvin Eder was.
I knew Marvin very well.
Okay, Marvin, of course, was a plumber up in New York City.
That's right, yes, I know.
He's living in the Bronx, I think, with his daughter right now. I mean, he was one of the strongest men of all time. I think he weighed maybe in the 190s and all. There are a few guys around in the 50s, but I mean, I think from what I read about you, your strength feats probably dominated. I haven't seen much focus on that. Did you start out originally as an Olympic weightlifter and then do the odd lifts before there was actually organized powerlifting? How did you actually, focus on real strength feats? I know the whole trajectory, of course, of building yourself up as a kid, but I'm talking when you get to the higher levels.
Okay, well, when I got to the higher level, I was training 6 days a week, 3 days with the weights, and 3 days I was doing wrestling, amateur wrestling. I loved both sports. But as I was getting bigger and growing and getting stronger, I loved in the weightlifting department. I loved all the competition. The Olympic lifts and the powerlifting, and I trained for both. And I trained very, very hard. I was, believe me, people who knew me will tell you that I was nuts. I was a fanatic with my training. And so I competed in both. I competed in Olympic lifting. Back then they had all three lifts, the military press, the two-hand snatch and clean and jerk. Later, as you know, they eliminated the press. But I loved it.
I believe after the 72 Olympics, the whole issue of too much backbend, and of course, one of the later figures to come along in wrestling, Kenny Patera, I believe, had set a record in the military press about 505.5 pounds. But the whole issue was a lot of back lean. It wasn't that strict a lift. But anyway, go on.
Well, everything loosened up as far as the rules. But anyway, to tell you as far as my part, so I competed in both Olympic lifting and then I would compete in powerlifting. I must admit that powerlifting was more of my favorite, but I loved Olympic lifting as well. So by 1959, the year that I turned pro, which was toward the latter part of the year, but that year, in the beginning of the year, I had made regular visits up at York. I'm sure you remember where they used to have at Bob Hoffman,
John Grimmick, Strength and Health, Muscular Development, the whole gang over there at York.
Yeah, but do you remember the summer picnic they had?
Yes, of course. Where they also had a softball game.
Yeah, well, I don't know about the softball game, but I was competing in different lifts and what have you. And in fact, that's where I first met Marvin Eder. You mentioned Marvin. But anyway, in 1959, that's when I had my best powerlifting thing. Unfortunately, in those days, they didn't get the recognition that they started getting years later. In fact, at that time, they didn't call it powerlifting, they called it odd lifting.
That's right. The first powerlifting competition didn't start until 1964. You're absolutely right.
Well, I was competing in powerlifting. I think my first contest was around 1955.
Right, as the odd lifts. And would this include bench, deadlift, and squat, or were there different?
And curls.
And curls.
Yeah, there were 4 lifts. Those 3, the squats, deadlift, the bench press, and curls. Curls then, like in Olympic lifting, military press, was eliminated because in curling it was getting to guys using heavier weights but jerking a little bit or whatever.
Doing almost a reverse power clean.
Well, no, I've never got that bad, but anyway, they decided to eliminate that. But I'll tell you this: the powerlifting back then, for me, it was the way it should have been and stayed forever, and unlike what it became later. When I set my record, at least Bob Hoffman announced it as a record, but in those days it was nothing official when it came to odd lifting. You know what I mean?
Right.
But when I did it, Bob Hoffman said that he gave me credit as a record because there were guys who had claimed over 500 pounds, but they had not done it in strict competition. Because the strict competition was this: when you did the bench, you took the weight. You had to bring it down to your chest. The judge said 1,001, 1,002, clapped his hand,
right,
and you pushed the weight. Now, you were not allowed to wear anything on your elbows, nothing at all, or knee pads, nothing like that. And you had to do your lift, and once they count 3, you couldn't arch, you couldn't move the body. You just strictly had to push it up with your arms without any support, like the slightest little bridge or anything like that. And so it's very strict, and I got up to 565 in that fashion.
That's what you did in 59 in that competition, that odd lift competition, 565.
565, and I did a 755 squat and a 705 deadlift.
And it's important to mention, today, many people who, for example, in the bench press, they use what are called lifting shirts, which hold them in very tight and almost give them 70, 80 more pounds on the bench. And of course, you also did this natural, which was no steroids, no growth hormone, nothing like that. So, I mean, I think, quite frankly, how much did you weigh at the time, Bruno?
When I did my 565, I was at about close to 260, okay. 255, 258.
So if I get this right, and I'd like the listeners to get this straight, because there are a lot of kids, a lot of young people, young athletes and all. You weigh 255 pounds. You were raw in terms of you weren't all wrapped up, and you were completely, no steroids, nothing like that.
We never heard of steroids back in those days. I never knew what they were till in the 60s. It was the first time I ever heard the word steroid. And I inquired about it from a gym owner named Tommy Minicello at the
Mid-City Gym, which originally was Times Square and then 48th Street and 8th Avenue, which I suppose you trained at...
when I was in New York, I used to train there. And I asked Tommy Minicello, I said, Tommy, what's the steroid somebody mentioned in the gym? And that's the first he told me a little bit about steroids. So in my days of competition, heck, I never heard of any of that stuff.
Have you kept up and looked at the records? Because quite frankly, the way you did those 3 lifts, I would say, I don't know that anybody's really gone much beyond what you've done, if they have gone beyond it at all, raw and clean.
Now they have gone bigger, but here's I saw one in New York, and it disgusted me to where then I didn't pay attention to it anymore. They had these, I don't know if they were rubber, or leather, I don't know what they were, but they had these things up from their, up above the wrist to the forearm and up to almost their armpit, and I couldn't believe it. I found out it took like over 200-pound pressure just to bring the weight down to your chest.
That's exactly. Worked like a rubber band to snap it back.
Yeah, and then they push up with that, and they eliminated the 2-second pause, just up and down. And then, like you said, the fella, I'm not mentioning names, a couple of these guys, they were all roided up like crazy. And I said, what the heck is this? This it's ridiculous. It was a joke. So no matter what I hear as far as how much more they do, and I don't know because I don't follow it at all anymore. But to me, it doesn't mean nothing if they're using those kind of things in their elbows, and if they're for squats on their knees, and then roided up. That to me is all artificial.
So your lifts were just clean and raw. Let me, if I could just hop into a couple of other lifts. Best military press.
365.
365, and now that was the old-fashioned military press, heels together.
Absolutely.
Okay, the way it used to be done. So 365 on the military press, same body weight.
Yeah, about the same body weight.
About the same body. Power clean.
How you mean for
where you clean, where you take the weight off the floor and yank, clean it up to the shoulders without going into a squat position. In other words,
I never did squat position for the clean and jerk or snatch. I used to split the split.
Okay, best clean and jerk.
My best clean and jerk was 410.
And best snatch.
My best snatch, that was my worst lift. I never quite hit 300. I did around 285, 290.
Yeah, and that's of course a more technical. If were you ever involved, by the way, in any of the throwing sports, hammer, discus, any of that? Because a lot of guys with your type of power and strength, might have gotten into that at the same time. You ever get into any throwing?
No, because I was into wrestling at the same time. Like I said, I spent 3 days with the weights, but the other 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday was wrestling, and Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday was weights.
And that was the Pittsburgh YMHA, if I recall.
First the YMHA, and then the East Liberty YMCA.
I got you. And when you were up in New York, when you were appearing in Madison Square Garden, all besides Mid-City Gym, did you ever go to any places like the McBurney Y?
No, just strictly no. Only Tommy Minicello's gym. Before Minicello was Abe Goldberg, who had the gym, and then later they bought it from him, and Tommy did, and then Tommy had the Mid-City Health Club, and that's where I always trained when I was in New York. That's the only gym I ever trained in New York.
When you were at York, did you have an opportunity, for example, to see? I guess you might have met John Grimmick or some of the legends over at York. Did you ever have a chance to train with any of those fellas?
Yeah, I knew John very well. In fact, I stayed in touch with John Grimmick till almost the end of his life. I knew him, Steve Stanko, Jules Bacon, Terlazzo was up, Turpak, Johnny Turpak, and a lot of times when I was wrestling, and I was wrestling in the vicinity because they used to come to the matches, but I purposely go early so I could go to the gym and work out there, take a workout with those guys, or if not to work out sometimes if the time didn't permit, just to go in John's office and shoot the breeze with them and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I knew those guys very well, as well as John Grimmick. As well as Bob Hoffman.
Got you. When we focus on the world of professional wrestling, now I'm not talking in terms of wrestlers, I'm talking in terms of strength athletes. I mean, would you rate other guys in your class, fellas like, let's say, Kenny Patera? Were there others that we haven't heard of? I mean, Patera's famous because he was a well-known Olympic lifter before he became a professional wrestler. But were there other of your contemporaries who you would say, there's a strong fellow. There's a fellow, if I brought him to the weight room, he could really lift quite well.
Yeah, well, okay, Patera, I'm glad you mentioned him because, Patera was tremendous, no question about it. But there were guys like, did you ever hear of a guy named Dick Garza?
Yeah.
No,
I have.
Did you, Chris?
I have.
I never seen him lift, but I was always told, because he was from the Detroit area, and I was always told that he was a pretty good lifter, pretty strong, but I never really knew all this lift. Then there was a guy from Spain. He had different names. The name I knew him by was Pepe Chichero. Mm-hmm. Another name he used was Hercules Cortez. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him. Mm-hmm. But he was only good, not the Olympic lifting, squatting, forget. He was a good bench presser. He was around the 500-pound mark. But gosh.
In terms of professional wrestling, would you say besides yourself that three names I could toss out there as bona fide strong men, weight room men, strong guys on barbells? Ken Patera, as we spoke about. Ted Arcidi. I guess Arcidi was already there when you had retired.
I've seen him with the WWE. Look, he was a very nice fella. I liked him. I liked Ted Arcidi, and he did a tremendous benching act. But unfortunately, though, he was one of the chemical age.
Yeah,
I don't know what he would do clean, huh?
Came quite a bit later in a different era with different.
Oh, absolutely, a different era where they were using all kinds of enhancement drugs.
I'm curious. Back in the 1970s, Bruno, when there was this, when they started out on, I know if you remember the Wide World of Sports on ABC, they started this whole thing called the Superstars when they took different athletes from different areas to compete in a whole bunch of different events. And when they started out the first World's Strongest Man, when people like Lou Ferrigno and people like Colombo and so forth were in there, Franco Colombo, were you ever contacted by any of those shows to say, hey, Bruno, come on, compete as a World's Strongest Man and so forth?
I was contacted once in the 70s. I don't remember exactly what year. But by that time, forget about competing in any of that. I already had injured my back severely. I had my elbows were pretty banged up, and I had to change all my training around. I couldn't push those kind of weights that I had been training with. If they had come in the middle up to the middle 60s, I know without question I would have done it. But by the 70s, I'd already had knee problems. I wound up having 3 very major back surgeries, hip replacement. I've had 4 knee surgeries, and of course, I don't know if you fella know my career enough to know this. I broke my neck in 1975.
That I.
So when you're banging your body around like that, things happen. And as far as that kind of lifting, you can forget about.
So what do you attribute to your longevity, though? Because here you are. You're now 73, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I am.
73. You're still hitting the weights 3 days a week. You're still.
Yeah, but don't think I'm lifting those kind of weights.
It'd be interesting though. What kind of weights are you using? I mean, 73 years old. Many people only dreaming about what they did 50 years earlier. What type of weights are you lifting now at 73? What could somebody who really focuses on potentially look forward to?
First of all, the average 73-year-old, if he's been training and if he hasn't beaten up his body like I have, he can do much more of a variety of exercises than I do. But what I do what I can that would not do any damage to the back after all those surgeries and that. So what I do basically is, for example, a lot of on a bench press, for example, I go up to 225. That's the heaviest I go up for about 6-7 reps. I go to if I do the dumbbell, sometimes I go up to the 90s, and I do sets of 8s with that. Curls, I go up to, I use between 45 and 50 pounders for curls. What other lifts that you might be interested in?
Any lower body work, or are you able to work the lower body with the back issue? Do you do maybe a leg press or something like that?
No, I do leg extensions on a machine that I have. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Just leg extensions. I do about 6-7 sets of those. But that's it. Like for the shoulders now, I do like side laterals. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
absolutely. Side laterals. And I use the 40-pounders still for an exercise like that. Sitting down on the machine with the handles, I do presses, but again, from a sitting position because I got the back support, you know what I mean? Because otherwise I wouldn't do stuff like that because I'd be afraid of, because I had my 3 back surgeries, they all took over 6 hours. Each one took over 6 hours. So I'm careful as to what exercises I do, not to put any stress on certain areas where I had that kind of surgery.
And what are you weighing in at these days? I've seen pictures of you. Look in great shape. You look very lean.
Yeah, I fluctuate between 215 and 220. You got to figure that in my heyday in wrestling, I was 275. Then I dropped down to 250 when I broke my neck and came out of the hospital. So again, I decided to keep that extra 25 pounds off because I was getting older, and I just thought it'd be a smarter thing to do. And then eventually, I just thought very gradually work toward taking off more and more weight. But I can't get below what I am right now, no matter how much I tried. I just can't because I still like to eat a little bit, and I'm very big boned. So when you're heavy framed like I am, bone-wise, you just can only get down so far, and that's it.
Now let's be honest about this. I mean, anybody who spends as much time in strength training as you, I mean, we develop some level of, pride in what we're able to do in the gym.
Absolutely.
You must be awfully proud of yourself with the numbers you're still putting up, Bruno, because quite frankly, and I don't know if you get to commercial gyms these days, but most fellas in their early 20s are not doing what you're doing now. Now, yeah, of course, there are competitive athletes who certainly do far more. But, I mean, you're 73. I could take a senior in college who says, I like to go to the gym and I work out and so forth. A lot of these guys aren't benching 220. They're certainly not doing reps in the bench press with 90-pound dumbbells, that's for sure. So there must be some level of self-satisfaction with that.
Well, you know what the problem with that is that I guess I should keep saying to myself, hey, you're 73, you're 73, you're 70. Because when I look at what I used to do, one time at Minicello's gym training with Darryl Poole and I think Schwarzenegger might have been there because I worked out with him a lot of times too. I did 6 reps with 500 pounds on the bench. This is in the mid-60s. So when I look back at what I used to do, well, I don't look at others. I look at me and I say 225 for 5 or 6 reps.
Yeah. So what is that for me? In the past, I put that on the bench and I do 40 reps as a pop-up set.
I'll tell you a lift that I did that it may still be standing today. At least that's what I was told recently, but I don't know for sure because these kind of records aren't recorded. But I will tell you that you can have check what I tell you with a guy like Tommy Minicello who owned the gym and Harold Poole and who was some of the other key players at the time. But anyway, we used to go up as heavy as you could and then come back for reps. And I developed I did a pretty good feat, which, Jim, do you ever hear the name Vic Boff?
Yes, absolutely. New York Icebergers. He's the guy who founded the American Association of Old-Time Barbell Men or such thing. They got a thing each year up in New York. I don't know if you ever went to it.
But no, I was honored there. I was one of the people honored because Vic Boff would not honor anybody that was known to have used steroids.
That is correct. That is correct.
And so they honored me, which I was thrilled and grateful. He personally, and I didn't never mention or anything, but he spoke at night a little bit and saying that Bruno did a feat that, as far as I know, is yet to be broken. And what that feat was, I got 330 pounds for 38 reps on a bench.
Wait, you have to repeat this because I want everybody to hear this. Say this again.
I did 330 pounds on a bench press for 38 consecutive repetitions.
Now, Chris, I want to bring you into this. If we think about the NFL Combine today, and the NFL Combine usually has at least, has in it 225 pounds for reps on the bench and, 40-yard dash and all. I would think that most guys would do superbly in the NFL Combine if they could bench press 30 reps with 225.
Well, that's what I heard. 25 and 30 reps is what I've heard.
With 225, not with 330. You did 38 reps with 330.
And what year was this?
That's something you can check. Like I say, if you know the Minicellos and if you know Harold
Minicello, from last I heard, is down in Florida in retirement. By the way, did you ever read his book? He wrote a kind of novel Romana Clef about, I'm not going to say who the character was.
I know what you're saying, yes. I used to, yeah, I know Tommy, like I said, well, because I trained at his gym before he had this gym, when Abe Goldberg had it, like I said. But when I was in California wrestling, I would stay Santa Monica, and I would work out with right at Joe Gold's gym. And I'm talking, I don't know if you knew Joe.
Absolutely. Joe Gold's gym by Venice. There was a restaurant there, a place people used to go to called the Lighthouse. There was a gym before that called the Dungeon, where people like Dave Draper and Arnold Schwarzenegger would train even before Gold's. I don't know if you ever made it over
No, but I worked out at Joe Gold's gym and with those guys. With Draper was there, and with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Colombo guy. What's his name even worked there? Zabo Kazuski. He was.
That's right. He's famous for that was his famous horns.
Yeah, well, I worked out with those guys right at that gym. So I don't know this other gym that you're talking about, because I guess I don't know.
I think that was probably even a little bit earlier. And then there's a fellow. Did you ever work out at Vince Gironda's gym in Studio City?
No, but I went to Vince Gironda's gym. I was there with another fella that I was out in California with, because I had never met Vince Gironda, and I heard so much about him, his gym, and what have you, that one day we had time in the morning, and I went over, and we met, and I saw his gym, and there were a couple guys, in fact, working out that I didn't know.
From what I remember of it, kind of a wood panel place, had rings hanging, and more of a bodybuilder facility, from what I recall.
Yeah, but those gyms, like even Joe Gold's, the one I worked out at, those were, to me, were great gyms for whether you were a bodybuilder, whether you were a lifter, because they certainly had all the equipment. They had dumbbells that went up to like 150 pounders. Then you could make bigger ones than that, but I mean the regular solid dumbbells, they went up to 150 pounders. They had a lot of Olympic sets. They had everything. Anybody could train there if you're a bodybuilder or a lifter.
Now, I've got to ask you this, Bruno, because probably when it comes to a combination of knowledge about wrestling and knowledge about strength training, you've got to be the absolute go-to guy with knowledge of both of these fields, both of these worlds. The movie The Wrestler has come out. I don't know how much you paid attention to it, focused on it, whatever, with Mickey Rourke. Now, here's the thing where I just had to shake my head, but I want to hear what you make about it. I heard Mickey Rourke say, I believe it was on the show Access Hollywood, he claimed he had to put on 34 pounds of muscle in 6 months. Now, the guy was over 50 years old. Is there any way on earth, any way possible, is there something I don't know about, where a man over 50 can put on 34 pounds of muscle in 6 months cleanly by eating a lot of protein, eating a lot of meals, and lifting a lot of weights?
Without a doubt, in my mind, there's no way in the world anybody would ever make me believe that. That is pure 100% nonsense. There's only one way, and one way only, at that age, that he could have gained that kind of muscle, and you know what it is.
Yeah, I saw it, and I said, gee, maybe better off just not to say anything. Maybe just,
you know, some of the most knowledgeable people about the body and weights and what have you, they will tell you that when you train, you reach your peak at a certain age, and they say that as we get older, like from the time you hit 40, if you've been training for years, by the time you hit 40 till 50, you more or less can come close to maintaining what you have. But there's a slow deterioration that no matter how much you train, it's just that it goes slower, but it continues. And listen, I can speak for myself. I train regular. I train hard at this stage of my life, and I can see that. I think for my age, I think I look pretty good. I really do. But I can see that no matter how much I train the arms, no matter how much I train, let's say, the chest, I don't see no growth. All I can see is trying to maintain, or that you reduce slowly. In other words, the muscle cells die. Okay, it's impossible. to me, and unfortunately, people who know nothing about the weight game or anything like that, they buy this nonsense that somebody 55 years old can gain whatever 30 pounds or whatever solid muscle in 6 months. That is an impossibility.
Well, my question is, Bruno, looking at the state of the professional wrestling industry, it seems the nostalgia is more popular, the stuff of your times past is more popular, more talked about with these fan conventions, these events, and the current wrestling product on television. What does that make you think about the industry today?
Well, you know what? I didn't quite understand what you said about my day and today.
What I'm saying is you've got these fan conventions that you go to, and the fans show up in huge numbers. They're excited to meet the heroes of the past. They really take enjoyment in them, and they'll spend a lot of money. And they say that the experiences they have about the guys of the past are more exciting than the show that they're watching on television today. What does that make you think about the business today, then?
Well, I can't even watch it, I'll be honest with you, because I'm appalled by what's happening to it. And that's for me. This is a free country. If people like it, that's their right to look at it. Me, I find it thoroughly disgusting with the nudity they brought into it, the vulgarity, the profanity. Is McMahon would kiss my butt club, all this kind of garbage. And so they have a different kind of a fan than we ever had. And when I make these personal appearances, believe me, in a lot of these places we get an awful lot of people come over, which is always nice to see. But I hear the same things all the time. I hear people say to me, Bruno, I was such a big fan. I remember Madison Square Garden, or if we were in Boston, talk about the Boston Garden, or Capitol Center in Washington, wherever we were. And they say, my God, it was great. I went with my dad, or if it's an older person, I take my son. They just, I feel very strongly that the majority of the people were real fans. They absolutely miss that kind of wrestling, and they're appalled at what's happened to it. You have a completely different audience today. And let me also say this to you, that everybody tells me, yeah, but look how much more popular it is today. And I'm sorry, I'll argue that with anybody. I used to wrestle in the Garden in 1960s, 15 times a year. And then we went once a month to 12 times a year. Same thing with all the major arenas. Every month you were there. In fact, in Philadelphia, before they built the Spectrum, we used to go to the arena on 45th and Market, which held about 13,000. We used to go there every 2 weeks. Today, they can't go anywhere on a regular basis and draw a crowd. People may watch the TV, but they won't spend the money or take the time or travel to go to the arena. Madison Square Garden is down to one show a year. They come here to Pittsburgh once or twice a year, and they can never come anywhere near selling out. We used to pack those arenas in those days.
Yeah, so I want to interrupt you on this, Bruno. It's so true what you say. You know, I remember when I was growing up watching you, and my grandmother was a big fan of wrestling. And we had to tune in those days, we were tuning in, I believe, on Channel 47 in New York, which was a Spanish language a station. And I mean, it wasn't just the show, but for example, with you, one of the two things I always think about when I think about Bruno Sammartino, besides, you know, the living legend and your wrestling trajectory, is, number one of the strongest men of all time, done legitimately. But number two, just a decent, good guy. And I guess that's a social commentary that, you know, somebody being a decent, good guy anymore doesn't seem to impress too many folks.
Well, in my day, for myself, I can honestly tell you that I was extremely grateful that the fans came out and see me and all that. So I always felt extremely indebted to them, because I'm a realist. I know that if people didn't buy the ticket to come and see me, I wouldn't be no headliner, because these promoters, man, they cut you out in a hurry if you're not getting the job done. So I owe it all to the fans who bought tickets and came and support me, and because of them, I became a so-called a star. And a lot of the other people from that era, and I'd like to think most, I hope I'm right, they felt the same way. There's an arrogance about the new breed. It's not only wrestling. I think it's in sport. They almost feel like it's a privilege for you to go see them, regardless of what they even charge for you to go to see them.
Yeah.
And that's sad, because without the fans, I don't care what sport you're in, if the fans don't support it, those sports ain't going to pay. These guys today are making a ton of money. We never made anything like that. But these guys, they should even be more grateful, because it's because of the fans that they are able to make that kind of money. They say, well, they get TV contract. Yeah, but if the advertisers don't advertise because people aren't watching it or buying the products, there wouldn't be any money for the. You see what I mean? It's just a completely different world.
Are you disappointed? Here's a good point. You look at Giants. The Giants are building a new stadium in New York. The Yankees are building a new stadium in New York. Jets, Giants, whatever you want to call it. They're charging fans seat licenses to have the privilege to buy a ticket so they can have a season ticket, and the prices are just ridiculous. It's just gotten to the point where a middle-class father can't take his son or his daughter to a ball game anymore. Why do you think it's become so ridiculous?
That's the saddest of all. You have big stadiums that hold 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever thousand people. You would think that they would be thoughtful enough to have enough seats to where you have certain sections that would be affordable to the regular Joe who wants to take his kid. It seems like it doesn't matter. If they think they can get top dollar, if they think that there's enough corporations that'll buy out this or enough people that'll buy out this, it's almost like the heck with the little guy. And I think that's sad and pathetic. I really, really do. There should all, when I was wrestling, and one time I got into a very big argument with a promoter because they wanted to jack prices at the big arena. Mm-hmm. And, well, I'll tell you the place right here in Pittsburgh. And I said, you can't do that. I said, these people work in the steel mills. They work in, that's before the mills, unfortunately, went. But they work in the mills and they work construction. I know what kind of money they make because I had done some of that work in the past. And I said, you can't jack up their price where you're knocking them out. They love the game. They should be able to afford to come and see it. And I believe that so strongly. I don't care if I made less money, but that's what it's about. We're entertaining. We're in the entertainment business. I don't care what sport you're in. We're entertainment business, and it should be affordable to all people. And there's enough seats out there. Huh?
Do you think, Bruno, it's that because you came from a background of adversity in Italy, almost dying. You had siblings, right, who died, who your mother could not save, from what I had read, and she kind of said, Bruno, I'm not letting him go. I'm going to make this child live. And you made it through. You escaped, I guess at the time with the Nazis in Italy or whatever it was, and you finally came here to the United States and all. You came from adversity. You came
very
from
much.
adversity.
I had.
And then you got made fun of as a kid. The whole thing. Children can be very, very cruel. I'm sure learning the language and all this other kind of stuff, part of the immigrant experience. I think your generation and people who went through what you went through, you came from adversity, so you have appreciation. Maybe, and I hate to say this, but maybe for a lot of people today, things have gotten so easy that there's no value placed on it because they didn't feel they had to struggle to get there, and so they don't have that sympathy, like you say, for the little guy.
Well, you know what? I don't know. That's possible. You could be 100% right on that. I don't know. But all I know is that, yeah, you're right. I believe me, I had rheumatic fever during the war years, and how I lived, I don't know. But my mom, as you said, I had lost a sister and a brother, and she was crying. With my aunt was there. She said, "I lost two. I'm not going to lose another one."
I read that.
And I lived because of her. So I did have a humble beginning. So when I came to America, yeah, because my dad worked in the mills, and we lived in a neighborhood where not too many Italians, I guess, and kids, as the old saying, can be cruel. And they used to pick on me every day. And I used to come home with a black eye, bloody nose. But you know what? That was good because that's how I got started. Somebody felt sorry for me and introduced me to the Y, where they had the weights and they had boxing and wrestling programs. And that's how actually I got started. And as I got started, and I started getting a little stronger, a little bigger. It inspired me more and more and more until I became a fanatic. So all that helped. Yeah, but that humble beginning, it made a number of things for me. Number one, I thank my God every day for the opportunity to come to America, the greatest country in the world. Number two, that even though we made pennies in comparison to dollars that these guys make today, I was always extremely grateful that I was able to give my family a better living that I had known throughout my young years. And number three, I'm grateful and always will be that for the fans, because again, I repeat, if I was a so-called wrestling star, it was because of them. So I can't speak for these people of today. I see things that I don't like. I get invited to sports banquets. I see guys that don't want to sign autographs or don't want to be bothered or can get them away from me, stuff like that. And I feel sorry for them because, you know what, if somebody thinks something of me and they want to take their picture take with me, me putting my arm around a woman or shake a guy's hand and it puts a smile in their face, it's a good feeling to know that you made somebody feel happy. I don't understand why these people don't understand that and feel good that they're in a position to make somebody little happy somebody who actually contributes to their living, to their making the big bucks. I just don't understand that, and I guess I never will.
Well, different era. It's hard for me to understand. Bruno, tell me, has anybody ever approached you, or have you ever considered, especially with all the kind of negative things that we've kind of talked about, entering into the strength game and not doing it as it had been done in the past in a completely clean fashion at all? You ever consider maybe writing a book about strength training, writing a book about old school training, not dealing with wrestling, but dealing with what you have to have as kind of an encyclopedic knowledge of how to build up the body and put forward, look, from your case, who better than you? I mean, 330 pounds for 38 reps on the bench. I mean, these are Superman numbers. Do you ever give any consideration to that?
No, because there are a lot of people who were in a business, in a weight game that accomplish a lot more than me. You have Olympic champions. You have guys that hold so many records, and guys who are educated, have gone through college, whatever, are intelligent. As far as understanding, in naming even all the muscles, and I think I know how to train because I experimented through the years my body with different lifts, different ways of training and what have you. But I know what worked for me and worked for me great. I don't know that I'd be the most qualified guy to do that. I think there are other people that that are more qualified. I think that.
Would you at least say that what worked for you in terms of people listening was consistency and intensity?
Yeah, I was. That's one thing I was. I was very consistent, and I was very, very. I always pushed myself. I always drove. If I did the 5 on the bench next workout, I was determined that I was going to try and get 510. I might fail, but then I'd get that much more determined for the next time. And I always really, really drove myself. I'm not sure that would even be the best for everybody, But for me, I always drove myself and pushed myself. No matter what lift I did, it was never good enough. I had to do more. I had to do better. But I'll tell you this, you talk about the steroid era and that. When I did 565 on the bench, there was a famous hypnotist here by the name of Dewey Devers. In fact, I just ran into his grandson recently in a place where I made an appearance. He used to come to see some of these contests, and he approached me one time and he said, listen, he said, you have such good bone structure and everything. He says that I think I could get you to do 600 pounds on the bench press on your next meet with hypnosis. Now, I was a young guy. I was 22 years old, and I didn't know a whole lot about hypnosis and stuff like that, but this is the truth. I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it. And I said, if I do 600 pounds under hypnosis, I will always know for all my life that I did it under hypnosis, and I will never feel like it was a legitimate lift. You know what I mean?
Got you. So that's why you ended up and didn't go in that direction. Chris?
Yeah, I wanted to know, Bruno, from the original biography to the one that's been put out today, are there any new add-ons?
Now, from what I understand, I haven't seen it. From what I understand, there's about, I don't know, 8 or 10 pages or something like that of writing. Sal Correnti could speak more on that. And then there's more photos added to the thing. In fact, I have people who want me to do a real update book, but I don't know if I want to go through all that. Now there are people working on my autobiography, to do a movie or a documentary that's being worked on right now, and I don't know when it'll happen, if it'll happen, but they've been working at it now for a pretty long time. So we'll see. If that comes about, that'll show my whole story from the old country during the war, hiding from the Nazis and getting, being sick and coming to the sky. Tell the whole story.
I think it could be a very, very compelling story, Bruno. Tell me some. I read in preparation for the interview. Read all kinds of different things. Some of the things I just shook my head and said, "Could that really be true?" Is the Rooster Fleming story true? Did that fella really kind of confront you, or was that overblown?
I didn't even know who he was. This was at an arena. I was 50 or 51 years old at the time. And these guys, I was doing some commentating then. They came into this narrow hallway. You have to see the Civic Arena. And there were 6 of them. And I saw them coming, and I knew they weren't supposed to be there. And I greeted them. It's not like I was wise or anything. I said, "Hey, guys, hi, how you doing?" I said, you're not supposed to be here. And this one guy stuck his hand out to shake my hand, so I shook his hand. And then as I was shaking his hand, he started squeezing and squeezing, and I caught on that, I don't know that he was trying to show, to impress me or something. So I said to him, I said, "Well, what do you think you're doing?" I said, what do you think? You're going to hurt me? And he said, "Yeah, you're nothing but a washed-up old man." Well, I got angry that kind of disrespect. I said, "Not too washed up to knock you on you know what, With that, he took a shot at me, and I hit him. And then I'm fighting, and then I'm alone with all these guys, and I'm really going as hard as I can at this stage of my life. But here's the Sheik was taking a shower, and he heard the commotion. He came out of the shower to see what was going on, and he saw me battling these guys. He was bare, naked, and he came running, and he got next to me, and then we kind of took care of business.
And this Rooster Fleming was played with the Pittsburgh Steelers, did he not?
Well, I didn't know who he was, but then I found out that he had been with the Steelers, I think, for 2 years. Then he had played Canadian football.
I wonder if he really knew who you were. I mean,
oh yeah, they called me by name. Sure,
but 51 years old is not an washed up age. The way you kept yourself in shape and all, the guy must have not been thinking too well.
Well, whatever, but that's what happened. That's a true story, and maybe next time they wouldn't be so quick in calling somebody a washed-up old man.
They say that Pittsburgh is a hometown when it comes to sports teams. Are you a big Pittsburgh sports fan? Are you a Steelers fan, or are you a real big fan of Pittsburgh teams, or do you not really pay that much attention to pro sports?
I'm a football fan, so I do watch football on TV, and I watch the Steelers, of course, but I watch other teams as well. I just like football. Baseball, hockey, Pittsburgh teams, I just follow the papers as far as how they're doing or listen to the news, but I don't go to the games or anything.
I got you. Did you ever a reason to, maybe in gyms back in Pittsburgh or coming up, cross paths with some of the illustrious personalities from the Pittsburgh Steelers, or maybe even an Art Rooney who did live in Pittsburgh and is originally from Pittsburgh, who owned the Steelers, or some of the players and all that you might have run across in the gym?
I know them all because they have big banquets here, like the Dapper's Den. I'm always invited to. That's a big banquet where they bring athletes from all over the place. But I've been going to those yearly. They always invite me to come, and it's one of their main guest, where we sit on stage, and they put us in a private room, before they announce us to come out one at a time, and all the stars are there. As far as a lot of the top ball players of yesteryear and today from Pittsburgh area. Same with baseball. The Rooneys, I know all the, I'm not all the Rooneys, but I know the Rooneys over here. Like I knew the old man Hart Rooney, I know Dan Rooney, and I know his son Hart Rooney. So
Did you ever run across a fella in your growing up, even a few years older than you, named Dave Flood, who was from Pittsburgh, who went on to play ball for Notre Dame and came back and played for the Steelers?
What's his name?
Dave Flood.
No, I don't.
Yeah, he was born in Pittsburgh, played at Notre Dame, then came back to the Steelers. He was a hometown guy and all. A lot of guys, same gyms, work out in the same places, run across each other and all. But it seems, in every respect, I don't know what you'd like to question or add, Chris, but it seems that at this stage of the game, you're still working out hard, training hard. And you sound good, and like I said, from the pictures I've seen of you, you look good. God bless you, Chris.
Well,
thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, well, definitely in closing, Bruno, this is the third time I've spoken with you. We did a few interviews for my radio program maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I'm sure you might not remember, but worked with through Georgianne McCarpolis, who I know has been a great friend of you over the years, and a great woman that she is. I'd like to say, what would you just like to add in closing about where life is today in your view on what's ahead for you?
What's ahead for me?
Yeah, sure.
What's ahead for me? It's my wife and I are celebrating our 50th anniversary, so we're going to go back to the old country where I was born and raised. Pardon?
Congratulations.
Thank you. And other than that, believe me, my life, I'm at peace. I'm happy. My wife and I are, I kid around. I say we're dating again because every Saturday we go out on a date. I have my grandchildren and my sons here. I love getting up early in the morning because I do my thing first, my workouts, whether it's the aerobic or the weights, and then the rest of the day, whatever it brings, it's fine. Sometimes we do things. Other times I like to read, or if there's a special on. But it's a very simple life, but it's one that I enjoy after all those years of traveling around the world. I did 20 tours of Japan. I did a dozen tours in Australia, South America, Manila. I've been in Singapore, Hong Kong, Europe, South Africa. I wrestled. So this is, at this stage of my life, I couldn't be happier than be just where I'm at.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Bruno, for Jay Bildstein with Chris Shinnick for
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you,
I enjoyed talking to you.
Very informative.